began quietly. On the afternoon of January 24, 2026, Othaya constituency appeared calm, just another ordinary day in rural Nyeri. But at approximately 2:30 p.m, inside the front office of the Othaya Division Police Headquarters, a phone call came through. It was not an ordinary call. The caller refused to disclose his name. He introduced himself only as a member of ACK Witima Church. His message was brief but alarming. He claimed that the following day, Sunday, January 25, 2026, former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua would be attending a church service at ACK Witima. But according to intelligence, he said the church had received. Dangerous goons were allegedly planning to disrupt the service. His request was simple: please provide security. In a country where church disruptions involving politicians had become increasingly common, such a warning could not be ignored. And so, later that same afternoon, the officer commanding station, the OCS, made a call to Vigilance House in Nairobi, the headquarters of Kenya's police command. He reported the details exactly as they had been received. Then, just over an hour later, at around 3:45 p.m, a response came back from Nairobi. And this is where the story takes a strange turn. The instructions were clear. Other police stations were not to deploy officers to the church the following day. Instead, a special unit from Nairobi would be deployed to handle the situation. A special unit for a church service in Othaya. The next morning, January 25th, at around 6 a.m, church members responsible for opening and preparing the sanctuary arrived as usual. They opened the doors, they cleaned the church, they arranged the compound. But as they went about their routine, something unusual began to happen. Men they did not recognize started arriving, not in a group, not in a convoy, but one by one, quietly. They entered the church and sat at the back. Church members later estimated that there were over 30 of them. Because Gachagua was expected to attend, some assumed they were simply supporters arriving early. But then, another detail raised eyebrows. 3 men carrying large cameras arrived at the compound. They did not display any media branding. No visible station logos, no press identification. Yet they moved around the church compound as though they were preparing to document something. Hours later, Rigathi Gachagua arrived and took his seat. And nearby, according to accounts gathered from locals, the special unit from Nairobi had already arrived, inside a concealed Nissan vehicle, fully covered. They positioned themselves close to the church. Then came the moment that witnesses would later describe as chilling. At around 11:30 a.m, the mysterious men seated at the back began walking out, one by one, slowly, until the back benches were almost empty. And less than 2 minutes later, chaos erupted. A tear gas canister was thrown near the church windows. Smoke penetrated inside the sanctuary. Worshippers began coughing. Children panicked. The service collapsed into confusion. Inside the church, people scrambled for exits. But one detail stood out. Rigathi Gachagua did not immediately flee. Witnesses say he remained seated, scrolling through his phone. Outside, the Nairobi unit moved in. But they were met with resistance. Stones began flying. The attackers were not dispersing. They were escalating. The police responded with tear gas of their own, but the attackers appeared organized, aggressive, and determined. And as the confrontation unfolded, the men with cameras began recording, capturing the police response as the scene descended into disorder. Eventually, the police regained control. And then Rigathi Gachagua was moved out. He left the church compound and was whisked away into nearby bushes. But what happened next is where the story becomes even more troubling.
This is a teargas canister. Hii hata iko full. Haijatolewa. Pin.
Haijapasuka iko.
Ndio hiyo. Wale wanasema, hebu kidogo chama. Mtu anipigie picha. Wewe chief.
As the attackers fled, they ran in the same direction Gachagua had taken. And along that route, locals began finding something unexpected. Unused tear gas canisters. Not one, not two, but reportedly as many as 10. The canisters were scattered along the escape route, picked up by locals as evidence of what had taken place. And for many observers, this raised a question that could not be ignored. If these men were ordinary worshippers caught in panic, why would they be carrying unused tear gas canisters? Then came another detail, one that challenges the idea of a spontaneous escape. Witnesses claimed that as Gachagua and his security fled through the bushes, a motorcycle was already positioned and waiting for him. And this is where logic becomes important. In a real emergency, escape is rarely organized. When fear takes control, people do not flee with precision. They run blindly, with no direction, only survival. But in this case, the escape route appeared planned, and the transport appeared prepared. Because a motorcycle does not simply happen to be waiting at the exact point where a high-profile political leader escapes, unless someone knew in advance where he would pass. And if someone knew in advance, then they likely knew chaos would erupt. And if they knew chaos would erupt, then they may have been part of the design. Another uncomfortable truth emerges here. A group of ordinary church members cannot overpower a heavily armed special police unit from Nairobi. Not without coordination, not without numbers, not without intent. Which suggests that on that day, the police were not fighting worshippers. They were fighting organized goons. Then, on January 26, 2026, Nation Media Group, through NTV, received another mysterious call. The caller again requested anonymity. He claimed he was a police officer, one of those allegedly deployed to injure Rigathi Gachagua during the church incident. He claimed the officers had been summoned by their superiors from Vigilance House and that the plan was to disrupt the church service and, if possible, injure Gachagua. But he also claimed that the plan met resistance because some officers were still loyal to Gachagua. NTV published the story. But a key question remained unanswered. Was the caller truly a police officer, or was he an imposter planting a narrative? And this is where the investigation becomes unavoidable. Because now Kenya is faced with two mysterious calls. One call to Othaya police station, another call to the media, both anonymous, both carrying a message designed to shape public perception. So we must ask, was the first caller truly a church member from ACK Witima, or was he laying the groundwork for what was about to happen? Was the second caller truly a police officer, or was he manufacturing a story to implicate the government? And if both calls were strategic, then the chaos at ACK Witima may not have been an accident at all. It may have been a script written for politics and performed inside a church. You be the judge. And now, I leave the final judgment to you. Do you believe these church disruptions are state-sponsored? Or do you believe they are politically orchestrated to shape public opinion? Who, in your view, stands to gain the most from chaos in the church? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for watching Life Lens TV. Until next time, goodbye for now.